Um, Very good. Are we recording?
Yep, we're on.
Very good. Um, so, let me see here. All right, so we've got some stuff to talk about. All right, so which episode are we on?
11.
11. Hey everyone, welcome to the 11th episode of the Pocketnow PocketCast podcast. I will be your host, Brandon Miniman, editor-in-chief of Pocketnow.com. Also on the line, managing editor of Pocketnow, Mr. Evan Blass. Holler back.
Holler.
There we go. And also on the line, senior editor, Anton DeNaghi. Holler back, Anton.
Holler, hey guys, hey everybody.
Hey. All right, so a lot to talk about, although it's funny because every time we have a podcast, I say there's a lot to talk about. So next time I will say there's very little to talk about, and we'll do half the amount.
That'd be nice. Could we have only a half-hour show then?
Yeah, I'm curious as to what is the ideal length of a podcast. I'm assuming that people that listen, put the time into it. They listen on the way to work. They listen on the ride home on the subway. So there's not much of a difference between 30 minutes and 60 minutes, but I might be wrong. So those of you that are listening, if you rather our podcast be 30 minutes or you like it 60 minutes or you want it 90 minutes, which I can't promise we can do, let us know. I think the average out there is 60 minutes for the other podcasts that occur on the internet, of which there are many. Very good. So let's get started. So CyanogenMod 7 version 7 final was released. And I've got to admit that I don't follow CyanogenMod that much. Joe Levi, our resident Android expert, does. And it's a really, really big deal in the Android world. It's a series of ROMs that include a lot of really cool features that you don't get on stock devices. And if you go to cyanogen.com, I think it's CyanogenMod. Let's see, Cyanogen. Here it is, cyanogenmod.com. And you click on devices, you can see that there are ROMs for pretty much every device. So you root the device, you add this ROM, and Joe did a pretty comprehensive walkthrough of what's new in CyanogenMod 7. And the list is pretty comprehensive. I was pretty curious to see what they would be. For example, you can move the notification bar down to the bottom of the screen, which is kind of cool. You can change the way notifications happen. You can change themes. You can change performance tweaks, certain things about the display, and it's a pretty cool thing. Have you ever used CyanogenMod, either of you?
No, I haven't, but talking about those small tweaks, especially the one with the taskbar, I have to chime in here and say that Windows Mobile 6.1 and 6.5 had the option, it was a third-party application to move the taskbar down. But no, I haven't used CyanogenMod.
Yeah.
I haven't either. Basically because my main Android is a Droid X, and you can't use it on that model or any of the Motorola models whose bootloaders are locked.
So, okay, yeah, I'm looking here. There are no Motorola devices. Mostly HTC, and yeah, they're pretty much all HTC. I don't see any Samsung devices supported here. Just looking at some of the other features, a lot of them are sort of novelty features which you could achieve if you were to just get third-party apps. But I guess the draw of CyanogenMod is it puts everything, and it's been many years in the making, it puts all of these tweaks under one roof, under one ROM, so that you don't have to download 20 different third-party apps to get the same functionality. For example, there is a feature that might double your battery life, because apparently there are red, blue, I might get this wrong, and 2 green pixels on your display. And the reason there are 2 greens is because it requires the most amount of power to actually be seen. But if you disable the green and only have the red and the blue, your screen might look weird, but your battery life apparently goes through the roof. And CyanogenMod gives you that functionality. Another thing it does is it includes phone goggles, which is basically an add-on that disallows you from calling people late at night, presumably when you've had too much to drink or you've been taking too many drugs or something. So a lot of stuff, a lot of features, really, and also a fair amount of performance tweaks. Sort of just wanted to talk about that for a minute. So,
If you guys remember back in the day, approximately 2 or 3 years ago, maybe it was more, Windows Mobile was the standard for power users. Windows Mobile was everything a user wanted in order to tweak, to improve performance, to tamper with the registries and so on. And when Google Android came out, it was all about the usability. Actually, if I recall well, Google Android was, at the very beginning, what iOS with Apple is today. It was a simple operating system for somebody who wouldn't need to tweak or to enhance performance. But things changed over time, and Android became the #1 source and ROM and the platform for customization. Windows Mobile, of course, is in the past. Windows Phone 7 does not allow you to do any of these. And, well, with the iPhone, it's another different story. And with CyanogenMod, users who are really interested in improving performance, tweaking, adding that edge, that very little which doesn't come stock on Android devices is very useful. But there's the other part of the users who just prefer a stock ROM, as vanilla as it gets. And I think it really comes down to personal preference. I always was a vanilla ROM type of guy. I wanted everything stripped down, and I installed those 5 or 10 applications that were especially good for my day-to-day use, and I applied those tweaks which were good to me. With CyanogenMod, you get everything. Of course, you can customize it by different categories, and you can turn on or off or tamper with the settings for specific parts of the operating system. But if you don't want that, then you can always go with a vanilla ROM. But after so many release candidates, I think CyanogenMod 7, version 7, I think it's the final version, has matured. And I don't think when we will see the next version. I think we will see some next release candidates once Ice Cream Sandwich or Sundae comes out, and then it's another level.
Yeah, and you raise an interesting point. Android is sort of revered right now as the platform for tweaking and customizing. And previously it was Windows Mobile, of course, and Windows Phone 7 is probably the least customizable. But iPhone, it doesn't have the reputation as being that customizable. And yet, if you jailbreak, you can completely change the experience. Why do you guys think that, despite that the iPhone is a very hackable platform, it's not known as the hackable platform?
Because there's so many updates, I think, and every time it gets updated, you have to re-jailbreak it. So for a lot of people, it's not something that they want to even get into. It's like the Sony PSP and how the homebrewers were constantly battling with Sony every time a new firmware upgrade came out.
That's a good point. I was using the iPhone 4 as my daily driver for a while, and I jailbroke it. And I did all these cool tweaks. It started to get slow. I fell behind on upgrading the firmware because there's always a lag in when the new firmware gets unlocked, or whatever term they use for it. And it wasn't as pleasant an experience as it is in Android to upgrade to new versions and to tweak. So it's not as user-friendly in terms of tweaking as Android, which probably makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. But we have to make a differentiation between performance tweaks and those visual mods. You can jailbreak the heck out of Apple's iPhone and the iOS, and you will still get that same iconish home screen that you cannot change. But with Android, there are so many visual mods you can apply, and you can have another device with another user interface looking fresh every day if you want to.
Well, actually, and this was surprising to me, when I was standing in line for 11 hours to get the iPhone 4, I talked to this guy that was trying to convince me to jailbreak the iPhone 4. And I was throwing everything at him. I was like, what if I want to have a screen just of widgets? What if I want to have my missed call on the lock screen? And to everything I wanted to do, he said yes. And when I got home and I jailbroke, what he said was true. You can literally change everything about the iPhone. The big problem is that these changes dramatically, after a while of installing lots of different things, impact stability and performance. Not only that, but you have to update the tweaks, which sometimes aren't done very often. And so you'll get like a home screen tweak that isn't updated in 6 months because the developer made it, put it out there, and then didn't support it. So I think that there's an issue with the vibrancy of the development community for Apple devices.
Although to be fair, I mean, there's enough of a jailbreaking community that it supports an entire app store, and for a while it supported 2 app stores until they merged.
You're talking about Cydia?
And then I forget the name of the other one. Bonus points if anyone can think of it without looking it up.
I'm gonna look it up. Let's see. I've got my jailbroken iPhone here. Is it called Rock? I think it's Rock.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, that is interesting to sort of figure out and understand the perceptions behind this is like class. All right, let's move on. All right, so now we're talking about the HTC Sensation, previously known as the Pyramid. It feels like this thing has been out forever, but it was just it was just in the past week that it was announced at an HTC press event in the UK. A lot of other announcements with it. T-Mobile will be getting the Sensation 4G, which we're going to talk about. It's kind of big news. The Sensation is what we thought it was going to be. Dual-core Snapdragon 1.2 gigahertz CPU running on Android 2.3. It's got 768 megabytes of RAM. It's got the QHD screen, making it HTC's second device to go beyond WVGA. The first was the Evo 4G, or not the Evo 4G, the Evo 3D. And we're also getting a new version of Sense, finally, a dramatically different version of Sense for a while, for the last year, all the way back from probably the Desire HD era, where there was also the Legend and the Evo and the Thunderbolt, all have the same version of Sense, version 2.0 or 2.1. Finally, we're jumping to 3.0. There's a lot of cool stuff with Sense 3.0. It allows you to launch apps from your lock screen. It gives you weather on your lock screen if you want it, or the time, or stock quotes. It features new email application. It has new widgets, really nice looking. And of course, it has HTC Watch, which is HTC's attempt to do their own sort of video store.
Is that live yet?
I don't think it's live. I think it comes out with the flyer, and the flyer is going to be released, what they say, mid-May. So
didn't we also see that there's it looks like they might have a couple of other stores in the works. What was it? We saw HTC Read and HTC
Read,
Listen.
Listen and Read. So HTC filed a trademark application for HTC Read and HTC Listen, which presumably means that they're going to come out with their own ebook store and music store. And this is a very good strategic move for them, because if they can make a profitable music, video, and ebook store, bundle it with all of their devices, that can be very, very profitable for them.
So you think they're kind of butting heads with carriers there, though? I mean, especially Verizon has invested quite a bit in its Vcast, and I don't know how it would feel about HTC coming in and preloading a competitive marketplace.
Well, if Verizon continues pushing Vcast, which would make sense because it's been around for like a decade, they could have HTC scale back some of the features. They did this with the Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt doesn't have HTC's remote management HTCSense.com service. It uses Verizon's, remote management service. So annoyingly almost, HTC will have to, customize their devices and be subject to the demands of Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, and AT&T when they roll out their devices. But yeah, so in the US, we are going to see the Sensation as the Sensation 4G on T-Mobile. It'll basically be an Evo 3D, but without the 3D screen. It'll be a little bit thinner. Is this a huge win for T-Mobile?
Yeah, I think absolutely it is. I mean, this is a hot phone, any way you look at it.
And of course, it can take advantage of the 4G HSPA plus speeds.
Yeah, and it's interesting because usually, the U.S. lags behind in getting these high-end devices from HTC, and now here's 2 in a row that the U.S. is either getting first, as with the Evo 3D, or probably simultaneous to a European and Asian launch in the in the Sensation.
Yeah, why do you think we've seen that shift? I mean, just a few years ago, it used to be Europe got the devices first, and literally 1 year after, even as recent as the Inspire 4G, the Desire HD was released a year before that. Why is it all of a sudden we're seeing releases in the US first?
I think that the market here has matured to the point where we've now hit enough people that are interested in smartphones, that are on their first, second, and in some cases their 10th smartphone now. That's a bit of an exaggeration.
I'm on my 10th.
You're well beyond your 10th, dude. So yeah, I think and who was it who just said, was it I think it was the CEO of Sony Ericsson who said, the west coast of the U.S. is now the center of the smartphone industry.
Wow.
That's where it's at.
Tony, are you upset about this? You guys always got the cool stuff.
Well, no, I try to look at it as objective as I can. And of course, the U.S. market is one of the biggest markets when it comes to smartphones. And one of the biggest markets has one of the biggest markets with competition. And don't forget that Motorola is very strong in the US and it's not that strong in Europe. And I always expect big players to fight on a huge market rather than on a, let's say, European market, which is divided into several smaller markets, because the reality in Germany might differ from that in France, Spain, Italy. Especially UK, Canada, USA, and Australia are somehow tied, and the devices are manufacturers are trying to launch them at the same time on these markets, because these markets are, of course, targeted by everybody. Mm-hmm. And the sooner you get to that market, you have the edge.
Yeah. What's interesting is to look back and remember that one of the reasons Europe got devices first was because there was standardization almost from the beginning. I might be wrong about this, but don't all countries in Europe operate off of similar cell phone frequencies?
Yeah, you're right, but not all countries, and not. Let's take two separate and different countries. Let's take Germany and let's take Romania. We have the same operator. I mean, we have several others, but we have the same operator. Let's say Vodafone in Germany, in UK, and in Romania. The same operator in Romania or in Germany or in another country might bring the same device later than in other countries, which wouldn't mean a Europe-wide launch for the same carrier for the same device. But in the US, once you get to a carrier, it's a nationwide launch.
I see. I think although the US wireless market is a lot more fragmented than Europe, there's been a lot of investment in network. I mean, the US was first with 4G, as far as I know, with the WiMAX network on Sprint, first with the LTE network. So there's been an acceleration towards faster data, and the OEMs really like that. I mean, they want to put their phones on the fastest networks possible. And is there a 4G network in Europe, Tony?
There is, but it's in the western part of Europe, which is more, let's say, trying to keep up with countries like US and Japan and those countries which are trying to adopt technology faster.
Is it LTE?
No, I'm not sure it's LTE. It's 4G. I know there is 3.5G, and which is HSPA plus, I believe, but I'm not sure about LTE.
Russia's had WiMAX for some time. I know. Remember the Max 4G?
Yeah. They were actually first. That was HTC's first 4G phone back in like 2005. We were so jealous.
But why were you saying, Brandon, that the U.S. market is more fragmented than Europe?
Well, I mean, because if a company wants to release a phone, they've got to choose between, 4 different companies, all of which utilize 4 different types of spectrum. And in Europe, they could build really the same phone, right, and put it on Vodafone or, Orange, and really not have to reconfigure the device that much besides branding and built-in applications from the carrier.
Yes, that's right, but there are only a couple of carriers in Europe which are present in most countries. Besides those, there are several other local national carriers which also can be part of the game. So I think Europe-wise, we have lots more carriers than in the US.
So perhaps it's even more fragmented in Europe if you look at it that way.
But
Yeah,
you
maybe.
make a point, Brandon. There might be more carriers, but they're, basically using the same bandwidth, the same bands. While in the U.S., we have two GSM carriers that use different 3G spectrum, and then two CDMA carriers whose handsets and devices are not interoperable.
Yeah. Well, there should be a world carrier, world cell, right? We could all just have the same devices at the same time.
Imagine the turnover.
Yeah. But it would be a utopia. One more note about the HTC Sensation. I'm very much concerned with weight and thickness. But fortunately, the Sensation is actually thinner and lighter than the Desire HD by a little bit. And that's kind of a big deal because the Desire HD, the Inspire 4G, is a thin device. If you stack it next to even an Evo 4G or a Thunderbolt, it's pretty razor thin. So the Sensation's going to be a stunner in terms of, feature set, feel in hand, capability. We just need some Android to take advantage of multiple cores a little bit better, and then we've got a conversation to have.
Do any of you guys have that same feeling I have that HTC devices are boring nowadays? I mean, of course, there's a company signature when it comes to everything, even cars, or all BMWs will have that signature. But take HTC, for instance. The new devices all look the same. I have the impression they have a wooden box and they try to draw them and make them fit in that box. It's dull. I find them to be the same design, same button layout, same speaker grill, and they are playing just a little bit with the thickness and the radios and so on.
Obviously, you haven't seen the Cha-Cha then, Tony.
Yeah.
Or the cha-cha-cha-cha.
Or the Cha-Cha-Cha, as it were.
You're totally right. They do have the same design, but then I'm sure they do it, a little bit to save costs, to keep their development, their cycle kind of short. Because if they went back to the drawing board and made an all-new carbon fiber phone that was, 2 millimeters thin, that would take 6 months, and they can't afford to take their time in rolling out devices. So they iterate, and they iterate, and they iterate, and eventually they're going to have to sort of break away from the same form factor that they've had since. I mean, you can even see similarities between devices of HTC of today and like the Touch HD of 2004 or 5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe they honestly think that what they've got going is the best. In each of the aspects of the phone. The speaker grill, they've finally gotten it perfect. The body style, they think it's the most ergonomic. The screen is the perfect size. So, from their perspective, they may be making the absolute best phone.
And secondarily, they might be thinking that they're making the best phone, and compared to what else is out there, they have no reason to change the hardware. I mean, no one else is innovating. No one's being the catalyst in changing. The iPhone really pushed the bar a little bit with glass and metal construction, a lot thinner, but HTC is doing metal construction now. They have glass screens. Their devices are thin. So we're really waiting for the next era, I guess, of hardware design. Whatever company decides to be the catalyst for that. But for now, there's almost no reason for HTC to do anything big. They have a formula that works, and competitively, they've got a good product.
Yeah, which wasn't so true even a couple months ago. We were saying that they were kind of falling behind what LG was doing, certainly what Samsung was doing.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on. We're going to talk about the Skype for the HTC Thunderbolt, which we showed on video. If you remember the early Thunderbolt commercials, you might have seen this guy sitting on a park bench, chatting with the video camera in the front, and it looked kind of like a native video chat solution. There weren't many, status bars on the screen or buttons to press. It looked really clean. Well, that was actually Skype, and Skype video chat did not launch with the Thunderbolt, but it's been leaked in sort of a beta form. It only really works on the Thunderbolt. It's been tested on other devices, and it works pretty well. But the problem is that it's not an actual native solution. It's still a standalone app. You can't get to it from the dialer like you can with Apple FaceTime. Do you guys think that we'll ever see Android with a native FaceTime-like chat solution, or do you think that there are too many models, too many software versions, too many OEMs, too many carriers to even begin to do this?
Yes and no, and this depends on the market. And as we've been speaking before about this, it all comes down whether carriers or a specific market is into video calling. Whether you call it Skype, FaceTime, or standard video calling, it's not the same in Europe like it is in the US. Mm-hmm. So every market has its own specific. We've had video calling here standard over GSM in Europe since years now. And people don't seem to use that, maybe because of the rates, maybe because they don't find it useful. And for me, as an end user, it's the same thing whether I use Skype for video, FaceTime, or regular video calling. It all comes down to whether I want to use that feature, whether I want the other person to see my face, or I want them to see, or I want myself to see their face. So I think the question is whether Verizon really wanted the Skype to be part of the phone, or they did not. I think it comes down to the market, as I said.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to, as you implied, on the topic of whether video chat matters. It could be the best video chat solution in the world with the best frame rates. It could have the most stellar integration with the native dialing application, but at the end of the day, most people aren't going to use video chat because they don't want you to see their face or to see what they're doing or where they are at random moments in time. It's a very we've talked about this a lot, but it's a very specific use case scenario of when video chat matters. Like when your kid's taking his or her first step and you want to show your husband or wife. That's one example. Or you want to pick out a new shirt and you want to ask your, again, husband or wife or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, how does this shirt look? Will you still love me if I get it?
Well, that you can always take a picture or shoot a short video, send an MMS, put it to Twitter, to your Facebook. I mean, calling somebody and that actual calling screen, which asks you to answer with video or without video, puts that certain amount of stress for the party which is receiving the call. Why does he or she want to see me in video? Oh my God, how does my hair look? What am I wearing? And that's, I think it's unnatural.
And you only have 10 seconds to decide or to put pants on.
Absolutely.
Or whatever?
Absolutely. And if you answer only with voice, then you are in an awkward situation. Why did you decline my video call? Do you have something to hide? And I think it all comes down to people.
That's so funny you mentioned that. I've done this before. When I first got the iPhone 4, I would call my friend Mason. He got an iPhone 4 as well. And I was so excited about this FaceTime thing. And I would put my pants on because I always operate with my pants off. And I would, brush my hair, put on a nice shirt. I don't know why I did all of this. And then I would FaceTime chat him. And he wouldn't answer with video. Well, probably because he was in his PJs or he just didn't want me to see. And I felt for a second, I know it sounds kind of trite, but I felt almost insulted that he didn't answer with video.
Yeah.
So from there on out, I decided, maybe text messages and phone calls are just the best way to communicate for now.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, that is Skype and the Thunderbolt. It's kind of annoying. I heard a radio ad 2 days ago about the Thunderbolt, and they mentioned this video chat. But come on, guys, video chat doesn't exist for the Thunderbolt right now. Stop airing this advertisement that's making people think.
Maybe they know something.
Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe they know something, and it's coming very soon.
Huh. Well, if it were up to you, they would have to stop calling the Atrix and the Inspire 4G devices.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
No.
Here it comes. I sent out a tweet. I just want to check in once every 6 weeks with the world to see if this problem still exists. I sent out a tweet and I asked anyone on our Twitter is getting their promised 4G speeds on their Atrix 4G or their Inspire 4G. And I'm pulling up the responses right now. Where are we? Here we go. Mentions. Okay. Scrolling down. Let's see. This was from yesterday, actually. And the responses were the same that they were 6 weeks ago, 6 weeks before that they are getting basically worse than 3G speeds. So they'll get burst to 3 megabits per second down, maybe 2, but their upload speeds, of course, without HSUPA are still like 200K. And so to not go off on a rant, the problem still exists. There is still no AT&T 4G network. After, how long has the Inspire been out? That was the first one. Let's see.
Middle of February.
3 months.
3 months. 3 months. It's appalling. It really is. And you know, they could solve the problem temporarily by releasing this HSUPA fix, so at least we can have our upload speeds back. But anyway, let's move on. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about for Windows Phone 7 this week, which is great because there seems to be a lot more Android news than there is Windows Phone 7.
Yeah, this is the first real Windows Phone 7 news we've heard since the launch, I would say, or since the devices started going on sale. I mean, Microsoft was kind of absent at both CES. I shouldn't say both. At CES, MWC, and CTIA, we hardly saw anything Windows Phone 7 related.
Yeah. I mean, 6 months later, they're talking more about it. A lot to talk about, actually. We've got 4 or 5 things to talk about, but first thing I want to talk about is applications. So back when I was reviewing the Samsung Focus, I had a good time with it. It was a good phone. Of course, it was missing some very key features like fast app switching, a better way to jump to an application in the start screen, which they're fixing in Mango. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But also very important is applications. Does the platform have the basic apps that you or me or whomever uses on a daily basis? At the time, the answer was no. There was no Angry Birds, which everyone, of course, plays obsessively. There was no Skype. There was no Amazon. There was no Kindle. There was no New York Times. But that is starting to change naturally. I mean, over time, this is going to get better and better. And it was announced that Angry Birds and Skype are coming to Windows Phone 7. So those are very strong applications that a lot of people have been holding out for. But it's almost symbolic that this is happening, that these companies are devoting their resources. Skype is doing it, and Rovio for Angry Birds. They're devoting their resources for Windows Phone 7, which is basically their endorsement of the platform.
Is it though? I mean, we know that Microsoft certainly isn't shy about throwing money around when it sees a problem, and it essentially had to bribe Nokia into to coming over into its tent. And who knows if that's not the case with some of these big software developers as well.
That might have been true, although if
I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it's possible.
It's possible. Although if you were Microsoft and you wanted to have Skype on your platform from day one, wouldn't you pay to have it on day one, a major app like Skype?
I think Microsoft almost bit off more than it could chew with the Windows Phone 7 launch, and literally it didn't have the time or the resources to get everything done that it wanted to. So, it just may not have had the people to go out and coordinate with, Team Skype or Team Rovio.
That is,
they did have a lot of apps that people were looking for.
Like Twitter, Facebook.
Netflix, I think, was a big, launch app for them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think because they weren't there at launch that precludes the fact that Microsoft was pulling some strings, but it's also totally possible that these companies do see some success in the platform and see it having enough of a future.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say that that Rovio is one company that's very concerned with the security of the marketplace, which is why they gave the Amazon App Store an exclusive on Angry Birds Rio at launch, because they know Amazon is going to have definitely a secure environment for transactions, and Microsoft with the Windows Marketplace is going to be the same way.
Right. Yeah. Very compelling stuff. So that's, Rovio is very selective, and they want to make sure their apps aren't pirated. So hopefully this is an indication that the Windows Phone 7 marketplace is secure, and it's got the features and the delivery and the offering that a company like Rovio has made millions and millions of dollars off of their products. They're finally satisfied with that. Moving on about Windows Phone 7. So we've got Mango coming out, which is the big update to Windows Phone 7, probably Windows Phone 7.5 if you want to call it. And we knew that it brought, 2 or 3 major things: fast app switching by holding the back button on the hardware, 2, IE9 to bring better browser performance, and what was the third thing before we heard about the new stuff? Do you guys remember?
It's Twitter integration, I think, in the People Hub.
Yes, Twitter integration in the People Hub. But then Joe Belfiore came on stage and whipped out a can of like 10 more things that Mango will do, and we were very happy about this. I'm going to go over some of them now quickly, and then we're going to kind of discuss whether this is enough. And I'm going to point Tony and Evan towards an article in the Skype chat while I do that. So, faster app management. So, one of the problems with Windows Phone 7 is that if you go to the program list, you get an endlessly long list of programs. And if you've got 40 apps, this is a big pain in the butt. So now you can press a letter like you do in the Zune HD, or you can hit the search button and be taken immediately to the app. Another thing that they've refined in Mango is new marketplace search results. So right now, if you search for something in the marketplace, you're searching for a song or an app, it jumbles it all together, which is kind of ridiculous. But in Mango, it's kind of segmented in the pivot list. Speaking of the marketplace, the app screens are updated to be more user-friendly. Now, when you have a free app, the button doesn't say purchase, which makes no sense. It should just say install. Bing results, the built-in Bing application has been improved. The browser has been improved even more. It supports background HTML5 audio streaming. So if you've got, for example, Pandora in the browser streaming HTML5 audio, you can leave the browser, still have the music play. Also, there is the address bar on the bottom in landscape. A couple more things, live tile improvements. So now there's more versatility in how developers can take advantage of live tiles. And live tiles actually can work sort of within applications. So the scenario they gave is a Qantas Airlines application, and you've got little tiles inside the app, different flights. You can tap and hold on a tile that represents a flight and put it on your start screen. Of course, we've got custom ringtones, which is always nice to have, and system-wide performance enhancements. Mango uses 30% less RAM per app, faster app launch times, better physics for scrolling, and more. So a lot of improvements for Mango. Are you guys satisfied with this, or do you think that there are still a lot of things left out?
Well, there are a lot of improvements in Mango, but from the typical end user point of view, how many of these are major? I mean, okay, fast app switching, major. System-wide performance enhancements, major. IE9, major. But the rest, marketplace search results, updated app screen and marketplace, and all the other Bing search results are not something huge, are not, how should I say, not breaking and shattering your world, are just some features which are added. And most of the people out there would say that these features would probably should have been at launch. I mean, yeah. Come on, copy and paste. We waited 6 months for that. We will wait another additional 6 months for fast app switching, and we got fast app switching 1 year after the Windows Phone 7 platform was launched. I'm happy to see Microsoft is committed to constantly improve the ecosystem, the platform, but there are some things which I think are overly marketed. Of course, major features, 1, 2, or 3, it's okay to have a refresh every 6 months, but over marketing, I don't know, a search button in the application list, over marketing a improvement in the Bing search results is, I think it's overrated. What users want to see is huge features added constantly, and if possible, they wanted them to be added at launch, if possible. I don't think does it make sense what I'm saying?
It does, and I just want to chime in for a second. I think users also, by the way, I should preface this by saying, if you look at these new features, guess what they are? They are catch-up. None of these features are innovative.
Absolutely.
compared to the other offerings out there. I think people want to see some badass features that we as mere consumers cannot think about. We want to see Apple style things, meaning, Apple seems to be able to anticipate what we need before we need it, which is always a fascinating prospect. But all of these things to Mango, they're very much necessary. They're great, but they're just bringing the platform to where it should have been or should be today. What do you think?
Do you guys think that it would have made a huge difference if Microsoft would have waited with the launch and maybe launched with Mango?
I think that would have killed them.
Yeah, they already launched, 8 months too late.
Yeah.
So then what they do now, it's normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they did, and it was very clear, is they just got it out. And I'm sure there were conversations in Microsoft HQ when they said, we need copy and paste. And then some guy was like, all right, that'll take 2 more months. And the guy in the front of the room said, all right, forget it. Let's just get it out. We'll get the updates out later. Let's get the traction, and we'll figure out the other stuff in the future. And that's what they're doing.
I mean, how's different the market now in April than what it was in October or November? We still have Google Android and Apple iOS in the top 1 or 2 spots, and Windows Phone 7 is still playing catch up to achieve those 2-digit market share. I think it would have been clever to wait a little bit more, maybe launch in February with all the features in it so that it wouldn't alienate all those users which put their soul to it. I mean, coming from Windows Mobile, I came from Windows Mobile and I was highly anticipating Windows Phone 7. For me, copy and paste was not a feature. I never used it. It's okay to have it. But fast tap switching is something huge. I don't have to always get back to the start screen, select another application, go back and forth and back and forth. I think my personal opinion is that they should have waited a little bit more to launch with a little bit more.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that. And you could also argue that would have been the nail in the coffin. So that's always an interesting conversation to have. Real quick, want to just chime in and say what we aren't seeing in Mango, or at least what we don't think we are going to see in Mango. Certainly, they could come out with these features, but there's a list of 9 we have here. First of all, Wi-Fi and USB tethering. Come on. I mean, that's almost a right for a smartphone user.
Can I be just a second? Excuse me. Can I be the attorney right now? We've waited how long for Wi-Fi tethering on Apple devices? We just got them at 4.3. So I'm gonna be the attorney now. I was the prosecutor 5 minutes before, and I'm gonna defend Microsoft on this now.
All right, that's fair. But the problem is that if Mango were to launch in February, this last February, and it didn't have Wi-Fi and USB tethering, it would be fine because people would say, well, iPhone doesn't have it, so. But the fact that Mango's coming out in late 2011 or 2012, it makes the platform look worse. Number 2 is screen capture. Come on. To do screen captures on Windows Phone 7 is very difficult. You've got to download the developer tools and blah blah blah. Flash support in the browser, which some people don't care about.
That's not Microsoft though, as much as it is Adobe, right?
Yep.
Well, couldn't Microsoft work with Adobe, get a piece of software to get it to go?
I'm not sure they want them to, because Silverlight is coming, IE9 is coming, and Silverlight is a strong competitor for Adobe's Flash. I'm not sure that Microsoft wants to have Flash support on Windows Phone 7. So this, again, is my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's a bad attitude for them to have then, because I mean, most sites are still using Flash, not Silverlight, and they're not going to be moving over to Silverlight. They'll be moving over to HTML5, if anything.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, Silverlight's almost as bad as Flash in that respect, that it's a last generation web technology and the world's going to HTML5. So
yes, but Microsoft can tell you that we no longer, or we don't intend to support Adobe Flash. We are moving on to the next gen. We will support HTML5 with IE9, and we already are 1 step ahead. We're just waiting for the others to catch up.
then I'll go out and buy an Android that does support Flash. I mean, Flash is important to people, and it's a big selling point. You know, look at the BlackBerry Playbook. It's one of their bullet points. It's one of the bullet points of the Zoom, and for good reason, because it's annoying when you don't have Flash and when you're not getting the full web on these devices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So other things that aren't in Mango, no support for front-facing cameras and video chat, no turn-by-turn text-to-speech navigation with offline support like Android devices now have, no support for third-party keyboards, no landscape support for the start screen, no sharing options for video, and Smart Dial. You know, you go into the dialer and you want to call Evan. Well, on an Android phone, whoop, I just turned off my monitor. That wasn't cool. on an Android, you type, 3, 8, 2, 6.
You told everyone my phone number. Now I'm getting all these prank calls.
I was spelling out your name, so unless they have Evan in the phone book, it won't work. Smart Dial. I mean, so some of these they're still very basic, like USB tethering, screen capture, and Smart Dial. Come on, is that really going to take that long to include? So, Mango looks good, although perhaps not as good as it should look. And hopefully we have more surprises, and hopefully, most importantly, we'll see this in 2011 and not 2012. Boom.
Yep.
Very good. All right, so next thing we want to talk about, more Windows Phone 7. The Chassis 2 specs were announced, and of course the Chassis 1 specs define all of the specifications for the current crop of Windows Phone 7 devices. So you've got the 800 by 480 display, you've got the 1 gigahertz processor, 5 megapixel camera, so on and so forth. Microsoft's kind of going in the opposite direction with Chassis 2. They want to support lower-end devices at lower price points. So let's see, what's the difference here? You can do an 800 megahertz processor. Screen resolution is the same. What else has changed in the Chassis 2?
I think everything's the same. We have a low, not specifically lower end processor, because the processor on the Desire Z is another category of processors. It doesn't drain battery that much, and it's still got the speed edge. So it's a fast processor, and Windows Phone 7 is a fast platform. So I'm not sure we're losing anything here. And we've got the gyroscope, and besides these, it's nothing. I don't think anything else has been changed from Chassis 1 to 2.
Yeah, they couldn't lower the RAM requirements anymore.
256, yeah.
I was somehow expecting they could lower the resolution of the screen, because we've been hearing about half VGA, and it's been there in the documentation even before Windows Phone 7 came out, and that would have made a statement for lower-end devices. I mean, like you take with the Android HTC Wildfire. Imagine a small device, price-oriented, maybe made by Nokia, and boom, you got a top seller blockbuster. But no, they just maybe shook hands with Qualcomm, and they said, okay, still your company, still your CPU, but we'll use the newer one.
Yeah, I mean, this is this whole situation is pretty basic economics. You lower price, you increase demand, but I think this is a little bit detrimental to the image of Windows Phone 7, because they're clearly trying to hit lower price points, so they sell more devices. But at the same time, it looks like they're taking a step backwards. I mean, the average user who doesn't understand why they're doing this might say, wow, shouldn't they be going in the opposite direction and requiring faster hardware, higher resolution screens? So it's almost inconvenient that Microsoft had to publicize this,
Well, as I said, it's not necessarily a step back. You have to understand that the processor is still fast. You have to understand that the GPU, which is accompanying the new Snapdragon, is the 205 GPU, and it's faster than the 200 GPU, which is on the current CPU. So I'm not sure it's a step back. I think it's half a step forward.
Well, intuitively it might be, although in the eyes of the average consumer, it doesn't get caught up with specs of phones, it might look like a step back.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, let's move on. Yet more Windows Phone 7 news this week.
Whoa.
Yeah, we're just going to keep going here. The HTC Maza, is am I saying that right? Was leaked on XDA, and it looks to be a device heading towards Sprint. It kind of looks like a trophy. It's a slab style device.
It looks a lot like a trophy. Did you see? I mean, the camera and speaker designs on the back, it's almost identical.
So there you go, the trophy for Sprint. And then a little exclusive for us, we came across what could be a 16 megapixel Windows Phone 7 device. We found an advertisement. It shows, in the advertisement, they show a device that kind of looks like the Desire S, but running Windows Phone 7. It could be a placeholder, but it kind of makes sense a little bit that HTC would do a 16 megapixel Windows Phone 7. Windows Phone 7 has some of the best camera features out there. You can launch the camera by tapping and holding the camera button when it's off. The shutter speed is usually very fast on these devices. It's very easy to review pictures. So it would make sense that HTC would do a digital photography focused camera.
Sure. I think it definitely makes sense for all parties involved. And I think one of the things that's sort of being ignored by a lot of people are chiming in to say, well, megapixels don't matter. The camera's going to suck because the optics are going to be poor. Well, we don't know that. We don't know anything about the optics, what kind of lens they're going to put on it, or how big the sensor is or anything. So I would think that if HTC's coming out with the world's first 16 megapixel phone and they're making a big to-do about it, that they're going to make sure it takes a good picture.
Yeah, they're probably going to invest in the camera technology and sort of break that trend where people think, okay, if I've got an 8 megapixel camera, yeah, it takes bigger pictures, but the pictures are grainy and they're soft when you blow it up. The number 16 is significant because right now the highest that is out there really is 8 megapixels. So they're going to double that.
Well, the highest from them. I mean, you've got 12 megapixels from the N8, and then you've got 14 from the Altec Leo.
Yeah. So it's a good round number for them, and that would be cool. That would be a way to differentiate not only HTC from the pack and do something different, but Windows Phone 7. I'm sure Microsoft would be excited for that.
I personally would settle for a 5 megapixel camera that would take better pictures than the iPhone, and I will be happy, ecstatic.
The iPhone does take pretty darn good pictures. You guys agree?
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually use the
Except
iPhone.
for motion.
What's that?
None of these, no camera phones have really been good at capturing, any motion. It's, all still shots. Anything with motion is going to come out blurry because, they just, they can't, the shutters aren't fast enough.
You mean when you take HD video on the iPhone?
Not video, when you're trying to take a picture of someone moving.
Oh, yeah. The shutter speed's just not fast enough. You're right. So maybe this HTC device will be the first one to have a super fast mode. Actually, the Sensation claims to be able to do what you're describing, Evan, and what you see on the screen is exactly the picture you're going to take. There's no shutter lag.
Well, the nice thing about having such high megapixels is that you can set these phones on burst mode, and it'll bring the resolution down significantly. But if you have a 16 megapixel camera, it's really not going to matter if it even if it's halved or quartered. 4 megapixels in burst mode is going to be give you a fine result most of the time.
Indeed. All right, well, let us move on to the final bit for today. It's almost getting kind of annoying to talk about the white iPhone 4, but the white iPhone 4, according to Apple, I think it was a tweet from Phil Schiller, Vice President of Worldwide Product Marketing for Apple, said, yes, there will be an iPhone 4 in white this spring, a full year after it was originally promised. But this is kind of strange because the iPhone 5 should be due out in the summer if we ignore the rumors of delay. And so does this mean that does this confirm almost that the iPhone 5 will be delayed?
No, I think maybe it says, though, that the iPhone 5 won't come in white. So now it's like if you want a white phone, you're going to have to go with the 4, and they're going to sell some of that stock that they've built up.
Yeah. Well, they probably have a massive stock, and they're probably all running very old firmware, but it doesn't really matter because I think when you connect your iPhone to iTunes for the first time, it'll check. And
How
Doesn't
glad are we
matter.
though that we didn't wait for this thing? Like so for a lot of people, it was like, should I get the black one now or should I wait a month? For the white one, and it turned out it wasn't a month; it was many months.
indeed.
Doesn't matter the white iPhone coming out now. I mean, would anyone buy it?
Well, I'm not going to run to trade in mine or sell it or anything. I mean, it's almost disingenuous to my admiration of the iPhone at such a late period in time to say, okay, I'm going to go get the white one because I'm just going to wait for the 5, I don't know.
Yeah,
Doesn't it bother you though that your iPad and your iPhone don't match?
Yeah, I've got the white iPad.
It's
Actually,
kind of embarrassing, don't you think, a little bit?
well,
you can always do a paint job a la Adam Lane.
yeah, I can just, I can just paint it. Although there was that service that sent you the faceplates or you sent your phone in. That was really believable. And it was actually pretty much the same as a white iPhone.
Oh yeah, there's ways to do it. I mean, they definitely sell the parts.
I want a green iPhone. Or like a blue. Cool. Well, I think that will conclude the 11th episode of the Pocketnow PocketCast podcast. Thank you, gents, for joining, and thank you everyone who supports us and listens each week. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks
All
for
right,
the invitation.
Shannon.
See
Thanks,
ya.
Tony.